The office was silent that night. Maggie Clark, the night janitor, pushed her mop across the marble floors, her back aching. It had been another long day, just like any other. But tonight was different. As Maggie opened the last bathroom stall to finish her rounds, a faint, fragile cry stopped her in her tracks. At first, she thought it was her imagination. But then it came again, louder this time. Her heart pounded as she stepped closer and saw something that made her stomach drop. A newborn baby lay on the cold tiles, wrapped only in a thin, crumpled office jacket. His tiny fists flailed, and his weak cries echoed through the empty bathroom. Maggie froze. "Oh my God, who would do this?" she whispered, tears instantly filling her eyes. Her hands shook as she scooped the baby up, holding him close to her chest. He was so small, so fragile, yet somehow determined to survive. Maggie pressed him against herself, feeling the warmth of his tiny body and the fragility of his life in her hands. "You're safe now," she murmured. "I won't let anything happen to you." She ran to the security office, her mop abandoned on the floor. The guards stared in shock as she carried the baby out, explaining through tears what had happened. Paramedics were called immediately, and Maggie followed them to the hospital, refusing to let him out of her arms. The doctors examined the baby. He was healthy, though abandoned, with no name, no family, and no one to care for him. Maggie sat in the waiting room, holding him close, whispering words of comfort she hoped he could understand. She thought of her own life, the husband who had left her years ago, the miscarriage that had shattered her dreams of motherhood, and the lonely nights in her small apartment. She had spent years invisible, unnoticed, cleaning up after others. But here was a life that needed her, and she needed it just as much. "I'll take him," she said suddenly, her voice firm. The social worker blinked. "Excuse me." "I'll take him," Maggie repeated. "I'll raise him. He needs love. And so do I." After hours of paperwork, background checks, and interviews, Maggie finally walked out of the hospital with a baby boy in her arms. She named him Ethan. Life with a newborn was far from easy. Maggie worked nights, slept only a few hours during the day, and stretched her small paycheck to cover diapers, formula, and clothes. She often skipped meals to make sure Ethan had enough, patched up his blankets, and read him stories from second-hand books. Every night, she whispered the same promise. "You'll never be abandoned again, Ethan, I promise." Her co-workers whispered about her behind her back. "That poor old woman with a baby," they said. Maggie didn't care. All that mattered was Ethan's smile, the warmth of his tiny hand wrapped around hers, and the knowledge that she had given him a chance at life. Months passed. Stanton & Co. held its annual gala, a sparkling event where the city's elite gathered. Maggie stayed behind afterward, cleaning up, with Ethan asleep in a stroller tucked near the supply closet. Richard Stanton, the billionaire CEO, walked down the hallway. He noticed the stroller immediately. "What's this?" he asked, his tone curious but cautious. Maggie's heart raced. She straightened, holding Ethan close. "He's my son, sir," she said quietly. "I found him abandoned in the office bathroom, and I adopted him." Richard blinked. "Why would you?" "Because he needed someone," Maggie said, her voice trembling. "And I had enough love to give." For a long moment, Richard said nothing. He looked at the tiny sleeping boy, then back at Maggie. For the first time, he didn't see a janitor. He saw a mother, a woman who had done something priceless. The next morning, Maggie was called into Richard Stanton's office. Her hands trembled as she entered, Ethan in her arms. Richard sat behind his massive desk, his expression unreadable. I thought about what you said last night, he began slowly. In this company, we deal with billions of dollars, mergers, and profits. But none of it matters as much as what you did. Maggie swallowed hard. I just did what I had to, sir. No, he said firmly, you saved a life. And not just saved it, you gave it meaning. You gave it love. That's something money can't buy. He slid a thick envelope across the desk. Maggie opened it, her hands shaking. Inside were stacks of bills, enough to pay rent for years. Enough to give Ethan a future she had never dreamed of. Sir, she whispered, tears in her eyes. You deserve this, he said, and much more, but it's a start. For the first time in her life, Maggie felt truly seen. With Richard's help, Maggie finally provided for Ethan without fear. She rented a bigger apartment, bought him toys, and watched him grow healthy and happy. She told him stories of the day she found him, of how their lives had intersected by chance, and of the promise she had made to him that night in the bathroom. You're my miracle, Ethan, she would say, and I'll always be here for you. Ethan grew into a bright, kind, and thoughtful boy. He was curious, asking questions about everything, exploring the world with energy and wonder. Maggie encouraged him, teaching him compassion, strength, and gratitude. Years later, at Ethan's high school graduation, Maggie sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Ethan walked across the stage, accepted his diploma, and turned to wave at her. She's the reason I'm here, he whispered to himself. She's the reason I exist. Maggie clutched her chest, overwhelmed with pride. The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the financial struggles, they had all been worth it. Every tear, every ache, every moment of doubt had led to this.